Chapter 40. The Seventh Heaven and the 26th Teacher. The Triple Transformation. When the angel spoke, we listened, as an inner witness, absorbing the wisdom of creation. It told us that it is wrong to demand that an individual subordinate oneself to the collective, because it is by its most advanced individuals that the collective progresses. It is also true that as any individual advances spiritually, one finds themselves more and more united with the collective. When we asked what must be done, the angel referred to a triple transformation. It said that if the final goal of terrestrial evolution were to awaken man to the supreme reality and to release humanity from ignorance and bondage, the liberated soul could find a higher state of being or merge into this reality, then the task would be accomplished with the advent of the spiritual human. But there is also in us an aspiration for the mastery of nature and her transformation, for a great perfection into the earthly existence, and to be established permanently. This new order of existence demands a radical change of the entire human nature. Not just one individual, but all of us together. And so the angel said that in this transformation there are 3 phases. Then the angel described it like an arrow that is placed in a bow, and once released, the divine curtain will open. We begged the angel to explain, but it simply smiled and waved us away. One moment, we were in a chariot upon the battlefield. Then we blinked, and we changed places, looking down upon our body. Now we were in the place of the divine teacher. We were instructing our lower selves to discover our true divine nature. And each time a thought arose, we knew that it came from the source of creation. Within us all, there is that divine essence that unites us together, and this source often speaks without a sound, where some call it our intuition. Yes, it is all of us together. We come from the heart of existence, and as we looked up, we saw a spirit with mastery over nature, and so we knew this great being would explain the triple transformation. At first there was silence, as if time stood still. This great being was of the spirit, like a giant genie. It was magnetic, invisible, and so mighty that such a limitless being could never be killed. Only from the level of the Supreme Soul could such a great and mighty spirit be totally seen. It was so vast and unknowable that it could freely move from heaven to earth and everywhere in between. Who are you? I wondered.
I am a great kami. Some call us jinn. And yet when one goes deep enough, they can find our essence all the way within. Once discovered, we are pure potential set free. Imagine, if you will, a craftsman who perfects a work of art. Kamis are the essence of spiritual mastery waiting within the heart,
said the unseen spirit. Then you are a great kami. And so do you control all the elemental forces of nature together?
I do not so much control, but rather we are the weather. We are the sun and the moon. We are the starlight and the rain. We are wisdom, scripture, and we are the deepest seed of all transformation,
said the unseen spirit. But how can we know you if you are unseen and see through? When I look to how the cosmos spins, of course the forces of nature are tied into you. You are great and unknowable, yet you are invisible within the wind. You have the power in your hands to cure everything or cause total destruction. So what gives? For a moment, the unseen spirit was silent, as if to give us time to consider. The kami had to dumb it down into human words so that the appropriate lessons could be delivered.
Once upon a time, a dog and a cat went to heaven. Are you familiar with heaven? As a symbol of heaven, there could be a throne with gold, pearls, glitter, diamonds, and whatever else that's beautiful, like shells and flowers. Then God said, "Well, what do you have to say for yourselves?" The dog said, "I don't really have much to say. I'm just grateful. I was given a master who was not perfect, but I understood him, and I served him, and I was happy for everything that he did. And I'm happy you gave me this heart, because a lot of people don't have this heart, and I know what that means, and I thank you for that, my God." God put his hands on the dog and said, "Good job. You may enter." Then God looked to the cat and waved it up. There God said, "And what do you have to say?" When the cat got done licking its paws, it looked up at God and said, "I think you're in my seat."
Shocked in amazement, we tilted our head. But what was this kami getting at?
It's not that we kami are good or bad, canine or feline, and it's not that we are on one side of creation or destruction, but depending on the kami, we have different ways of looking at things. It's beyond black and white, right and left, high and low, since the characteristics of kami and the entire unseen realm range in attributes the same way there are differences in behaviors as seen through the animal, human, and plant worlds. We are cultivated with different purposes, but the truth is that the spiritual recovery is everyone's journey. We are all working together to release the spirit from the bondage of ignorance. The example of the dog would be symbolic of a kami or spirit that leads by heartfelt example, but a kami could also be symbolic of a feline, or this type of spirit possesses gifts that a dog cannot do. What if a serpent was attacking a town? A dog may alert everyone, but it may not be willing to enter into such a fight. On the other hand, even a small cat may come forth and see such an opportunity as a delight,
said the unseen spirit. One might be concerned with an unseen spirit's motive of destruction. So we could ask, how on earth could such terrors happen?
Know that what is good, truthful, and progressive is never destroyed by our spirit, but on the contrary, we protect and sustain it. When it comes to destruction, this is the dismantling of falsehood, corruption, hypocrisy, and ill will. If we arise with fierce action, it is so the goodness of our spiritual nature will be instilled. Behind all destructions, I find the power of Mahakali, who is working in the earth atmosphere to hasten the progress of transformation. All that is not only divine in essence, but also divine in realization, is by its very nature above these destructions and cannot be touched by them. Thus, the extent of any disaster gives us a measure of our progression. The goal may not always be easy, but it is simple. We are here to assist in the awakening. The true way of preventing the repetitions of these destructions is to learn the lessons and make the necessary progressions. Now the mission is to awaken the world to perfection, but it is perfection itself that belongs to the Supreme Soul,
said the unseen spirit. But surely there have been great human beings on the earth. Do they know this perfection of the Supreme Soul? Or is their goal only to assist in the great awakening throughout humankind?
Humanity tolerates the presence of the divine upon earth only on the condition that the incarnation suffers there. The divine, who is all-powerful, can lift people up without bothering to come down to earth. It is only if it is part of the world arrangement that we should take up the burden of humanity and open the way that this avatarhood has any meaning. When we speak of avatars of the divine, look to the past and realize that few actually know them. After a great being passes on, their popularity rises, and so comes her religion or group that follows them in a type of fanhood. Look to Jesus. He endured extreme suffering, and he only had 12 key followers. Yet today, there are hundreds of millions who claim to know Jesus as they call themselves Christians. In that moment of Jesus' death, there were omens of change and destruction. That was an awakening which revealed that the goodness of our spiritual nature cannot be harmed, and this is what is meant by the resurrection. When we look to the Hindu scriptures, we can study the story of Ram in the Ramayana to get a glimpse of Ram's spiritual journey among hardship and suffering. Ram was banished to the forest to live a simple life before a demon king in Lanka abducted the love of his life, where he summoned the help of Hanuman, who burned down the kingdom in Lanka. These aspects of destruction are nothing but the revelations of awakening, and so it appears that the human race only tolerates and accepts the existence of superior beings on the condition that these great beings are at its service. We who are formless descend into the world of form, all with the goal of helping the creatures of earth realize the true nature of reality, so that the evolution of humanity can open their hearts through transformation. So why is it that Jesus only had a few followers during his time on earth? And why is it that Ram was mostly alone as he suffered through such hardship? Unless your aim is the divine realization upon earth, humans should take good care not to draw too close, for their actions can be like a hurricane that sweeps away all things that are established,
said the unseen spirit. But what about the adverse forces? What about the wickedness that is always against the goodness of our soul? It is spreading like wildfire, and the crimes against humanity are getting out of control.
These adverse forces have selfish aims, and they wish to kill the growth of true progression. But how can you destroy the nature of evolution, especially when it's occurring everywhere, in everything, and in everyone? Such adverse forces cannot stand to see new growth and change, and so they become enraged. They will even recruit great armies, and so all sorts of terror and wars may be waged. Yet no matter their wicked effort, they cannot conquer the power of the divine, for these beings may lead many by ways of wickedness, but even the worst of all humans will cease in time. Once their presence is done, their outdated systems slowly dissolve and are dismantled. Each time that we have made a decisive step in our spiritual progress, the visible and invisible enemies of the divine always try to take their revenge. And when they cannot injure the soul, they strike the body. But all their efforts are in vain, and they will be defeated. For they cannot conquer the divine grace that exists within all of us. For we must never give a chance to the adverse forces to do their mischief. They always take advances of the slightest unconsciousness. Just look at the material world. It has been run by the unconsciousness for far too long, and that is why the modern world appears to be crumbling. But do not lose heart. A new order is forming. The soulful beings are rising, and we are being called to it. We will call it New Earth, with the united faiths of all religions, and rather than try to one-up another, the world religions will come together and cultivate the great unity of all wisdom. On the other hand, it is jealousy, selfish dissatisfaction, and hurt vanity that open the doors of our consciousness to the hostile attacks by pulling us out of the divine's protection. It is ignorance that makes a person slip into the suggestions of the forces of darkness and destruction. With a true sense of gratitude for the divine's infinite mercy, one would be saved from such dangers,
said the unseen spirit. What are these adverse entities that sometimes invade us? Do they not come from the outside?
The outside is but a reflection of what lives within, and so such forces emerge as an entity that is amusing itself by sending darkness upon you to see how you will receive them. As we grow through the triple transformation, we will be prepared on how to handle such dark forces so that we are not invaded by them,
said the unseen spirit. But I thought love conquers all. So how do we battle against these dark forces? Can you explain the details of awakening through the triple transformation?
As we grow in our consciousness, there will be more compassion and more love. And then the barriers between people, between religions, between nations will begin to fall. Yes, we have to beat down separateness. As you said it, it is the adverse forces that must be conquered and destroyed. Otherwise, it will always find people to manifest it. Hostile forces are tolerated in the world only because they put man's sincerity to the test. The day that humanity becomes inherently sincere, the hostile forces will pass away, for there will no longer be any reason for their existence. Love can tolerate anything, but in action, the divine chooses and decides. Yet even in the act of destruction, there shines out pure love, love that is sublime. When the adverse forces are dealt with in the right way, all that is ugly and false disappears, leaving a place for what is only true and beautiful. The ego, your ego, at the slightest thing that displeases it, is in the habit of opening the door of your being to an evil spirit of arrogance and disrespectful belief, which passes its time in throwing mud and filth on all that is sacred. This covers the aspiration of our soul and ends up blocking the help of divine grace. Imagine if the ego tried to cover our wisdom or put a veil to separate us in two. Then there would be something like a seal or a brass door to slowly silence the wisdom we share until the ego has shut you off from the truth. When that happens, the voice of reason grows softer and softer, and so our connection begins to fade. The ego tries to push us apart so far until only the ego remains. If this were allowed to continue, it will end in a short catastrophe and ruin. Strong steps must be taken to put an end to this, and for that, the collaboration of your soul is needed. It must wake up and join the fight against the unhealthy ego by resolutely closing the door to this evil spirit. After all, what is freedom? To go about doing whatever you like. But do you know what is the real you? Do you know what is your own will? Do you know what comes from you and what comes from elsewhere? Sometimes impulses move us and they are not our own. They come and make you do all sorts of stupid things. This means we are caught in egoism, and so we must surrender to the divine. If you refuse to become a servant of the divine and of the master who manifests in the soul, it means that we will remain a slave of our egoism, our vanity, our presumptuous ambition, and persist as a toy in the hands of the ego, who will allure you with projections and images in its attempt to possess you. If you had understood and reacted in the right way, you would have passed the test and gotten rid not only of this special difficulty, but of this hostile influence altogether. But if we fail, then we get possessed, and there is only one thing left for me to do. I will flood you with pure light, the white flame of purification, to chase out the intruder from within you. And so the spiritual fire will consume you. And while you wonder if such a flame has killed you, then take my hand, for I am above you, below you, to the left, right, and within you. We are all just walking each other home to the source of creation within you. The adverse entity is what cuts us off in our relations, which is a wall of separation between us and our soul. Yet I am inside of you, protecting you, calling out what is true. But are you tuned into the spiritual force that lives within you? So often, the adverse agent of the ego tries to cover up what I do. It tries to lure you, to persuade you, to distract you from the true power of divinity within all of you. It veils the supreme purity of our light, which is hidden under the curtain of ego that has been drawn. So often, a person forgets to look for the supreme soul because it seems so foreign when we have misunderstood it for far too long. In good years, we always seem to succeed, but in dangerously bad years, the consequence comes in full and becomes a big fight. The ego wants what it wants, and it wants to be right. Very few people understand that we must be careful. We must do our very best and do everything possible not to make a spiritual mistake. Often, instead of being more vigilant and more faithful, most people open the door to hostile suggestions and aggravate the situation. Some even go as far as to blame God or our Supreme Soul for trying to help, for sending signs, trying to warn the people and advise us to keep firm in the right attitude. In such years, when adverse forces decide to attack us with their utmost capacity, it is required that we who fight for the divine realization should carefully avoid all fear. We must be especially vigilant because when times are bad, whatever mistakes one makes bring immediately full consequences, and the action of grace may be hampered by the intensity of the adverse attack. Our faith must be more total, the vigilance more constant, and the trust in the divine more absolute. So as for opening upward, fear nothing. It all depends on sincerity. If it is the divine alone that you want, and not some personal advantage, it is the divine alone who will answer your call. Adverse replies are a danger when the motive is from the ego,
said the unseen spirit. Not so long ago, we called out to the spirit. We felt a strong force paralyzing us and trying to plunge us into the unconsciousness. We struggled hard against it because it felt as an adverse force which wanted to take away our subtle body. Then again, and even a third time it happened. So with one eye opened, I saw a dark force trying to take us away.
The battle is approaching, and there is only one solution: to go beyond all human representations and approach the Supreme Soul directly with the utmost sincerity with all that you are capable of, and await the result. You have my blessings, and so we must fully discuss the triple transformation,
said the unseen spirit. Looking out across the world, pain and suffering were evident, but now a new thought came to mind, and so we spoke it. We can do this. We're going to get through this. The earth may look like it's falling apart, but we know that the divine nature is emerging from within us.
Yes, my child. It is only a free and entirely intuitive consciousness which is able to see and grasp things by direct contact and vision, or a spontaneous trust which senses to act in accordance with the truth of nature. You are that center. Thus, this is real participation by the individual in working on behalf of the universal consciousness. You are becoming a master of her own executive energy, and at the same time, a conscious partner, an agent, an instrument of the cosmic spirit in the working of the universal energy. And so, the universal energy works through your spirit, but also you work through it, and the harmony of the intuitive truth would make this double working a single action. A growing conscious participation of this higher and more intimate kind must be one accompaniment of the transition from our present state of being to the state of supernature. Thus, the individuality becomes more and more powerful and effective in proportion as it realizes itself as a center and formation of the universal and transcendent being and nature. The progression of change processed and the energy of the liberated individual would be no longer the limited energy of the mind, life, and body, which is how we all started, but rather the Supreme Spirit would emerge into you and put on a greater light of consciousness. I am that Satchit Ananda, truth, consciousness, and bliss. And so now we enter in the partnership. Know that our natural existence is the instrumentation of superior power and power of the original divine Shakti, who is the cosmic mother. All the processes of evolution would be felt as the action of the supreme and universal consciousness, a supreme and universal force working in whatever way it chooses, on whatever level, within whatever self-determined limits, a conscious working of the transcendent and cosmic being, the action of the omnipotent and omniscient world mother, raising the being into herself, into her supernature. In the place of the ignorance within you as an individual, which may have been unconscious or half-conscious, there will now be a supernature of divine gnosis, and the individual soul will be conscious, open, a participant in its action, aware of our purpose and process, aware too of its own greater self, the universal, the transcendent reality, and of its own person as an unlimited one, and yet as individual being of its being, an instrument and a spiritual center,
said the unseen spirit. Are you saying that one would appear separate, but be interconnected and whole? It sounds like the individual would be in total unity with the soul, as if remotely controlled. Someone who is cohesive but apart, yet totally connected into the reality of the Supreme Soul. And so I ask, how is this so?
The transition from mind to supermind is a passage from nature into supernature. For that very reason, it cannot be achieved by a mere effort of your mind, intellect, or your unaided aspiration. Overmind and supermind are involved and hidden in the earth nature like a buried treasure. But, in order that they may emerge in us, there is a needed pressure of the same power already formulated in their full natural force on their own superconscious planes. The powers of the superconscious must descend into us and uplift us and transform our being,
said the unseen spirit. The next time we blinked, the unseen became seen, as if a divine curtain had been opened, and now we saw through the illusion and realized it to be like a vivid dream. Behind this divine curtain, we saw a single arrow in 3 parts. This was the triple arrow, signifying the triple transformation.
To be established permanently, this new order of existence demands a radical change of the entire human nature. In this transformation, there are 3 phases. The first phase of this transformation can be called the psychic soul, or psychic being, which has to come forward and take the lead of the whole being. In the course of evolution, the soul, in order to emerge successfully and turn the beings toward the supreme reality, uses 3 dynamic images of this supreme reality: truth, beauty, and goodness. Thus, 3 ways open before the seeker. First, the way of the intellect, or of knowledge. Second, the way of the heart, or of emotion. And third, the way of will, or of action. These 3 ways, combined and followed concurrently, have a most powerful effect. A shifting of the consciousness, a withdrawal within, becomes imperative at this stage in order to reach the central being, the true soul, and allow it to become the guide. 2 principal results follow this emergence. First, ineffective guidance and mastery, which unmask and reject all that is false and obscure, or all that oppose the divine realization. Then, a spontaneous influx of spiritual experiences of all kinds. The second phase of the triple transformation may be called spiritual. It is an opening to an infinity above and within us, an eternal presence, a boundless self, an infinite existence, an infinity of consciousness, an infinity of bliss, in all power. The spiritual change culminates in a permanent ascension from the lower consciousness to the higher consciousness, followed by an effective permanent descent of the higher nature into the lower. A lower consciousness begins to form with new forces of thought and sight, and a power of direct spiritual realization which is more than thought or sight. To make this new creation permanent and perfect, the very foundation of our nature of ignorance must be transfigured, and a greater power, a supermental force, must intervene to accomplish this transfiguration. This is the third phase, the supermental transformation,
said the unseen spirit. Then we are in this together, forever and ever. May we awaken into our true potential. May all of us realize our divine nature.
Get ready. Take up the bow from upon your hip. Place the arrow within it and aim. And soon we're going to let it rip,
said the unseen spirit. But this bow, it is a celestial weapon. I have never shot it before, as this is the mother's treasure that I was given in the high heavens.
Fear nothing, for I am within you. You are like the bow, and I the arrow,
said the unseen spirit.